is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, we told you we'd be back, right? And back we are here with more Rebel Force Radio. Thank you so much for hanging out with us once more. And what a great show we have for you coming up. Something really cool and different and exciting in the Cantina. We have writer Laurent Hopman. And he's got a new graphic novel, beautiful hardcover graphic novel. He and his illustrator partner, Renaud Roche, called Lucas Wars. And it's really the complete history in graphic novel form of George Lucas in the development of the original Star Wars film, that whole drama that unfolded behind the cameras. But it gets into, George, seminal moments in his life, his relationship, particularly with his father, the near tragic fatal accident that he had as a teenager in the development of the original Star Wars film, that whole drama that unfolded behind the cameras. But it gets into, George, seminal moments in his life, his relationship, particularly with his father, the near tragic fatal accident that he had as a teenager, which then really prompted him to get serious about life. So it's awesome. So can't wait to talk to Laurent about that. Of course, there's been so many different adaptations of this story, but this one is particularly unique. So hope you enjoy that. Also, interview highlights with Mark Hamill. Speaking of the history of Star Wars, they're talking a little bit about the history of the Luke Skywalker character and the name. And then some highlights of Manny Jacinto of Acolyte fame, Chimere, on stage at Fan Expo Chicago, where, of course, the question comes up, what is the fate of Chimere? What is the fate of Acolyte? Could we see more from that? And we've been talking about this a little bit here and there because it's just so great, and we want to take these moments from the awesome documentary ILM Light and Magic Season 2, and particularly as they look at and reflect on the fallout of the Star Wars prequels, the Phantom Menace, Jar Jar Binks, all of that. Some really, really eye-opening moments there as they look back on that. Just what a moment that was, as the press and the public were all seeing these incredible characters for the first time. Plus, Outrageous Unthinkable Story, Star Wars and pop culture, and so much more here on This Week RFR. And if you're new to the program and introductions may be in order, my name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Back for more RFR, the final Rebel Force Radio episode before Rebel Force Radio invades Rancho Obi-Wan, which is going to be Saturday, September 6th. So by the time you're listening to the show, we're already going to have boots on the ground in Petaluma, California, beautiful Sonoma County, preparing for the invasion of Rebel Force Radio listeners onto Rancho Obi-Wan. And it's going to be an epic weekend, but we didn't want to leave everyone out in the cold this week. So we put together an awesome edition of Rebel Force Radio for you guys at home to listen to, or even if you're out in California with us, give this a spin because you're not going to want to miss anything that's happening here on Rebel Force Radio this week. Of course, Star Wars fandom excellence personified on Rebel Force. Now that's a big fat bloated statement, but you know what? Sometimes we really believe it, due to the power of our audience and our amazing Patreon supporters who are with us every week on patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, where they get access to bonus podcasts, ad-free episodes of Rebel Force Radio, and full show video. A lot of those Patreon supporters are going to be descending upon Rancho Obi-Wan this weekend, and we can't wait to see them. But fear not, fellow travelers in the Star Wars universe. We will be presenting you with complete coverage from this weekend's event. It'll be coming to Rebel Force Radio next week. We're going to have the entire live RFR podcast available on this very feed for you to listen to as if you were there. And if you were there, you can relive the excitement. And on top of that all, our videographer extraordinaire, Tyler Page, is going to be with us in Petaluma, and he will be shooting video of the entire program. So the full show podcast will be available via video and audio for all coming next week.
Hey, Jim, speaking of video, we were talking about this a little bit off air, but I want to remind people that we've released now multiple videos on our YouTube channel that chronicles our time at the Forest Moon Festival. So please check those out. I know most of you probably already listened to the mega podcast that came out, but there's great video of us there on the scene, and it really does give you a sense of what that was all about. So I know I'm enjoying reflecting and remembering all those great moments that we had. It was only a couple months ago, but it seems like a lifetime.
Yeah, what a great couple of Star Wars bookend events we had to like I say, bookend our summer. We started off at the Forest Moon Festival. Now we're going back to California, this time just a little bit south of Humboldt County. We'll be in Petaluma in Sonoma County and celebrating Rancho Obi-Wan, Steve Sansweet's 80th birthday. That I know they celebrated that a few months ago, but we're going to celebrate it again, damn it. And we're going to be out there with you crazy nuts that are going to be following us out there. And Rancho Obi-Wan will never be the same afterwards. Steve will probably need a lot of rest after we leave. I know he usually has to take about a month off after I visit just by myself.
Oh, just imagine
because I pack it, I'm like a cyclone coming through there. Now I'm going to have a bunch of my buddies and friends and pals there with me, and you Swank and Billy Mack and Baby Belushi and the Babu Freaks, and it's just going to be an outrageous, unthinkable story in itself.
Yeah, look for that in our outrageous, unthinkable coverage. All right, well, let's get to it. In the Cantina, Lucas Wars writer Laurent Hopman.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master?
For a drink.
Sorry about the mess.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Okay, as promised, joining us in the Cantina here on Rebel Force Radio for the very first time is writer Laurent Hopman. He's the writer of the Lucas Wars graphic novel. And Laurent, I got to say, there's been a lot of tellings and retellings of the story of George Lucas and the development of the original Star Wars film. But to my knowledge, this is the first and only graphic novel. So I have to ask, with a project like this and a story that is so familiar to many, how did you separate what canon you were going to use to tell your version of the story? Because there's George's version, there's various documentary versions and all of that. So how did you sort through all of that to come up with your version of the story?
Well, that's a good question because, as you said, everything has pretty much been said. But the idea behind this project was to tell the crazy story of how Star Wars was actually made, but through the eyes of George Lucas. What really hooked me was not the special effects, the groundbreaking stuff, which is amazing in its own right, but what really interested me was the human story, the human side of this amazing story. This quiet guy, shy guy in his late 20s, introverted, unassuming, trying to pull off a project that is way too big for him, or at least that's what everybody's thinking. What I really wanted to dig into was the human side, what's going through his head, and I don't think it has been done that way before, because maybe because mostly people are interested in the visual stuff, and it's harder also to get into the personal stuff, the psychology of the characters and everything. And that's what I really wanted to do. So my main focus was to deal with that aspect of things, and for that it was very important to go back to the origin stories, when it happened, how it happened, what people were saying back then. So there was a lot of digging up to do to find rare interviews and different points of views. So that was basically the starting point.
Well, I'll tell you what, as fans of the behind-the-scenes stories and the origin of Star Wars itself, like we are here at Rebel Force Radio, this book really scratches an itch, because what it provides to us is visual representation of some of these really well-known stories we've heard about for years and years. For example, very famously, after Star Wars was released, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg took a vacation to Hawaii, and they started to conjure up the concept for Indiana Jones while building sandcastles on a beach. Now, if that doesn't paint a mental image in your head, I don't know what would. But what is beautiful about this book is, forget the mental image. We get actual imagery of that moment. We actually get to see that moment happen. And I think it's great the way a lot of stories like that are represented. You even went, Jason's showing the panel right now. There they are, George hard at work with Steven. Of course, Steven wearing his traditional baseball cap on the beach. And fully bearded George. Is that a Speedo on Mr. Lucas? I don't even want to think about it. But another one is, like, I know another source you tapped into had to have been Carrie Fisher's book, Wishful Drinking, because there are elements of the affair she had on the set with Harrison Ford in this graphic novel, and it's so great. You know, you go into the boardroom with Fox, 20th Century Fox, and you're there with Alan Ladd as he's wheeling and dealing with the other executives to try to keep Star Wars on life support when a lot of the board members wanted to pull the plug on the whole thing.
That's what's great about graphic novels and comics in general, is that there's no budget limit when it comes to casting, sets, or special effects. When you're tackling on something as complex as retracing the origins of Star Wars, the graphic novel format makes it possible to faithfully bring to life this huge cast of historical figures, and in the settings of their time. But more importantly, unlike a documentary or a traditional book, a graphic novel lets you show the events, as you said. It enables us to bring to life the situation that were never filmed, obviously, but that we imagined, and now we can see them. As you said, like this terrible car accident, the moment it's drawn, it becomes real, and the violence of this accident is really hitting the reader right in the face. That kind of impact outside of cinema, I think you can only find it in comic books.
Well, I want to tell you, so as someone who's sort of, be honest, I've struggled with comic books over the years. It's not my favorite medium, but what I love about this is that Rono Roche, your illustrator, your artist, has such a great style. You know immediately who the characters are. And that's sometimes where comics fall apart for me, because I have in my mind what Batman looks like or Bruce Wayne looks like and Clark Kent or what have you. And then, you get mixed up in, well, this is this artist's interpretation. But Rono does such an amazing job of making these characters pop right off right out of your memory, or, what you think of these people as being and looking like, and putting it right on the page. So it sucks me in every panel. It's such great illustration.
Yes, exactly. Renault is really a great artist. It's his first comic book, believe it or not, and is right there in the medium, and he really masters it. And in comics, there's a tricky paradox. It's really hard to do realistic faces because they often clash with expressiveness. Either you get faces that look very accurate but feel stiff, or you get faces that are very expressive but look cartoonish. One of Renault's real talents is his ability to stylize his characters so they are both highly recognizable and highly expressive. That makes the reading experience really smooth, and the reader immediately knows who's who and who's who as the story unfolds. And the emotions come through clearly at just the right intensity. This is thanks to his expressiveness. And on top of that, Renault brought another essential quality to a project like this. He's a huge Star Wars fan, so he knows the universe, the visual codes, and also the characters inside out. So that's really, really important when you tackle on such a big project.
You know, I got to be honest with you. I'm really impressed by the way color is used. It's largely black and white, but color is splashed into occasional panels in a very deliberate way. And sometimes it really helps provide emotion to the particular panel, like when George and Marcia are having a little friction in their relationship, and all of a sudden the background suddenly turns red. It just kind of applies a little bit of intensity to the storytelling in a visual way that goes even beyond the words on the page, I think.
Yes, first of all, we wanted the graphic novel to be black and white, mainly black and white, because it would give the book an adult feel, and it was important. And then we wanted to add some color, and Renault tried out a few things, and finally he had this idea to drop these little color touches here and there, and there's most of the time there's a meaning behind it, because you have the yellow, which happens when destiny calls. You have the red, obviously, when it's dangerous or climatic, and so it's well thought of, and I think it brings life to the page, and it helps highlight some moments, some key moments in the story.
Boy, the other thing that I really like, and this is, speaking as someone who's obviously steeped in this stuff, has watched the documentaries and read the books, but is this book's ability to illustrate some of those concept ideas from early script drafts and things where you and Renault didn't have anything to go on. A lot of this must have come out of your imagination and his. How did you go about tackling those familiar concepts? Because we all know about Deke Starkiller and some of these, but to actually become sort of part of the canon yourself and being the first to visualize some of these ideas.
Yes, well, this was surely a blast for Renault, because he had carte blanche to do that. So he could put himself in the place of those early artists trying to imagine this whole new universe. So it was completely his vision and his ideas for all these designs, and it works pretty well.
It works great.
I'll tell you what. Hey, I have a question for you. As a career, you have been an entertainment journalist, and have you ever had any interactions with George Lucas himself?
You mean prior to this book?
Yes, or even up to now. I mean, has George reached out to you?
Well, yes. Since the book was released, we had some interesting interactions. First of all, the first contact we had with people appearing in the book was with Ben Burt and Joe Johnston.
Oh, great!
Can you believe that?
I mean, that's
I still
amazing.
can't.
Just these guys are passing around the comic book of their story is hilarious.
So that was something else. These two absolute legends of cinema taking the time to write to us. It was really just incredible, and it was especially amazing to see the humility and the kindness of those guys. So that was a huge gift for us as fans. And then not long after that, something pretty amazing happened as well. By that time, the book was starting to do really well in France, winning a few prestigious awards. And the book ended up in the hands of a French artist named J.R., who just happened to be working with George Lucas on a project at the time. And since he was a big fan of the book, he decided to show it to George Lucas. And we didn't know about that, obviously, because we didn't know JR or George. And one evening, out of the blue, we got a message from JR on Instagram. No warning, just a photo of George Lucas holding the book. So imagine that. So it was total shock.
Did you publish that online anywhere? Can we see that photo? Do you have it with you?
No, it's not really online. No, we're keeping it for ourselves.
It's a private moment. Yeah.
Yes, and we don't want to appear like we're trying to profit from this gesture by using it as a promotional tool. So, but we'll see.
It's
in
enough,
the future.
But right,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, you guys. That's a move with a lot of integrity, right there.
Along with the photo, there was also a lovely note complimenting us on the book, and just like that, they had both decided to reach out and well, it was a totally selfless and a very generous gesture. And honestly, when someone at this level does something like that, I think it really speaks a lot to their elegance and character. So, we were completely flabbergasted.
As you're writing this story, you're looking at it from mainly George's perspective, but as a film journalist or as an entertainment journalist, was there ever a moment as you were really diving deep into the heads of these different individuals where you thought that those that were calling George's dream and his aspiration to do this completely crazy, did you ever stop and think, maybe they kind of had a point? This was a very risky thing. Could you kind of see their side of things?
Exactly. You're exactly right. That's exactly what I think. Of course, we are rooting for George, and we like to hate these suits at the studios because they're really horrible characters. But at the same time, you have to put yourself in their shoes. And of course, it was a risky business. Of course, it was crazy. And most of all, I think when you look at the dailies or without the special effects, without the music, without the editing, and you just look at raw footage, you realize it was not that easy to see what it could become. It would take a lot of faith to imagine that it could make a great movie. So a little understanding for these studio execs because it was a hard call.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, they were just such maverick filmmakers, though, in the 70s. You couldn't tell anyone no. You really couldn't. It was all like they would just do anything and everything, sacrifice it all, put everything on the line, empty their own bank accounts, studio be damned, just to get the vision on screen. And I think that a lot of studio heads in the early to mid 70s didn't get that. Not at all.
Well, there's the great scene when
see the success.
There's the great scene when Coppola is they're at the screening of American Graffiti, and the guy's saying that the one exec is saying, "Oh, well, maybe we'll put it on TV," and Coppola goes bananas and says, I'll pull out my checkbook right now. I'll buy the movie from you.
Yes.
So
yes.
he probably didn't have the money to cover it, but he still threatened.
Yes, this is one of my favorite scenes because I really love this story, and it has been told also by Steven Spielberg, and this is one of the main sources for this specific anecdote. But it's really amazing, and the guy in question, Ned Tannen, who was the head of Universal at the time. By the way, did you know that the bully in Back to the Future is named Biff Tannen? As a jab?
Yes.
No, okay, you know that story. So this is a little inside joke from Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. So it's pretty funny.
Hey, can I share with you what my favorite panel from the entire graphic novel is? By the way,
Please.
I called it a comic book earlier, and I saw you grimace. So I'm back to calling it a graphic novel again, like it should be called, right?
Of course not.
But, these stories started to emerge, I think, like around the early 2010s when Kenny Baker was on the convention circuit, and he started telling some stories about Anthony Daniels and revealed that they had a rather rough relationship on the set. And then Anthony Daniels started piling on those stories in his own way. I remember there was a great UK program. I can't remember the name of it now, but it did feature Kenny Baker talking about Anthony Daniels in really unfavorable terms. And here I grew up thinking these two guys were best of buddies. But this is my favorite panel right here, if you can see. It's Kenny Baker walking by Anthony Daniels out in Tunisia, flipping him the bird. I just love that panel. I mean, that sums it all up right there.
That's where it all started. Yeah.
That is a beautiful, beautiful depiction of some real attitude.
You do offer an awesome bibliography, which is a great map for not just diehard fans, but new fans that want to know more. So you definitely cite your sources, which is awesome. Are there any in particular hidden gems, interviews, or old news articles that you can remember that you read in researching this book and went, wow, I never heard that before? What surprised you?
Yes, a lot. And what was especially insightful were all the testimonies from Marsha Lucas, because she's really a main character and she's pivotal in all of the story. And this book was a chance also to put these characters up front and to explain how important they were to the story, because the general public doesn't know them. And so any interview, any old forgotten interview with Marsha, and also more recent ones, because she started to speak again, as you know, a couple of years ago. So
Yes.
all of this is very insightful. And of course, you have to take everything with a grain of salt and try to balance every version of the same anecdote or the same situation. But her testimony was really, really enlightening and insightful and captivating.
Are you referring to the interviews she did for the Icons Unearthed documentary?
Well, this is one of the more recent
one
ones.
of them. Yes. It's astonishing, and those interviews are available on the Blu-ray unedited. It's so for anybody who's interested in Marsha's story. But as you say, with a grain of salt, we're talking about personal relationships here, a lot of hurt feelings. So it can color, and that's your job, as you know, how much to put that in there, and how much to lean on that, how much not to lean on it.
Yes, exactly. This was probably the main challenge. Was to balance all these testimonies and try to recreate a story as close to possible as the truth.
Yeah, I love also the portfolio in the back. that Renault put
Yes.
in with the different versions of the characters. And I got to tell you, again, as I was saying, nothing irritates me more than when I get a Star Wars comic book and the characters don't look, inside the way I think of them. So I would like to say that Renault should do all Star Wars comic books from now on. He should be the sole illustrator, because he does a bang up job.
Yeah,
Yes, he does,
indeed.
absolutely.
We were just on RFR Q&A, we were just reviewing a comic book where Mon Mothma looked a lot like U.S. comedian John Mulaney. It was really weird. They look like twins. Hey, Laurent, do you think any other making of film stories could become a great graphic novel? I'm thinking things like Apocalypse Now. Of course, Coppola again, Godfather, maybe even like a Wizard of Oz sort of situation.
Yes,
I'm just saying that
yes.
based on the popularity that show's currently having, thanks to Wicked and The Sphere and everything else. But
Have you seen The Offer, the TV show?
oh yes,
About
yes,
the
I thought
making
that
of
was
The
excellent.
Godfather?
Yeah,
It was an excellent show, but
yeah.
yeah, it was a beautiful show. But there's a problem when you try to tell a story like that and you take too much liberty with the facts. And
Yes.
the show was beautiful, but for dramatic purpose, they invented a lot of stuff that never happened. So this is something that I'm not really fond of. It's too bad. I prefer to try to stick to the facts as much as possible, and also the timeline. Well, that's me.
Do you think we might ever see a film version of this story, of the making
would
of
be
Star
interesting.
Wars?
Okay, all right, sure. If they want to, sure, okay.
You'll write it?
What are you doing next weekend? Let's make it.
I would love to see that as a biopic, of course. That would be amazing. It would be a problem with casting because you'd have to find a new Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and everybody. So that would be a problem, but I'm sure they can do it.
Yeah, I believe they can, and I think it would be a really good one. Better than The Offer, for sure, if more accurate, historically accurate. Hey, Laurent, can you tell us a little bit about your Star Wars fandom? Do you recall when you first saw Star Wars, you were first exposed to it?
Sure. My first experience with Star Wars started. I got hooked pretty early. I must have been 7 or 8 so when I first saw A New Hope in theaters. So it was like 77, 78 in France. My mom had just come back from New York, and everybody was losing their minds over Star Wars. So she got home and took me and my brother straight to see it, right when it had just opened in France. Back then, it was on such another level. Nothing like it had ever existed for kids. Up until that point, if you were a kid, as you know, your options were basically Disney cartoons. And then suddenly there's this huge grown-up movie that somehow felt like it was speaking directly to me. So I walked out of that theater completely blown away. I had no idea a movie could be that mind-blowing. And things got even wilder a couple of years later when Empire opened. I was so excited to see it that I was reading every article I could find prior to the release. And I remember reading this teen magazine that actually spoiled the whole plot for me. So before I even saw the movie, I learned that, spoiler alert, Darth Vader was Luke's father. But honestly, I didn't care at all. I was just too thrilled to see the next chapter, and he didn't ruin a single bit.
That must have been a thing with you guys in the 70s, because Jimmy Mack tells a similar story about spoiling the movie for himself. What was it? You picked up the novelization in the bookstore?
Yeah, they released it. Remember, they released the novelization like a month, maybe 2 months before the film was actually released. I couldn't help myself because when you're 8 years old, the 3 years between 8 and 11 or 8 and 12 or however old I was, that seemed like an eternity. And now there it was on his shelf right in front of me, all the answers. And I just couldn't wait. But we were so new to things like franchise entertainment and stuff. It was all just being born right in front of us. We were there for the genesis of it all. We didn't know how to behave. And so that's when I finally established a spoiler-free policy. And it was because I saw all my friends freaking out coming out of the theater after Empire Strikes Back. And I was like, what, you guys didn't know that? So I felt like such a snob. And I felt like I missed out on something. So I became spoiler-free after that. Yes. Totally spoiler-free. Hey, Laurent, there's a little thing we do here on Rebel Force Radio, and we reserve it only for the diehard Star Wars fans. It's not a quiz. It's a questionnaire. No answers can be incorrect. But, Jason?
But there are some answers that are more correct than others.
That's right. So this is something we call the Yoda questionnaire.
The Yoda questionnaire.
And we call it the Yoda questionnaire because these questions were faxed to us. That's right, faxed from the swamps of Dagobah by Yoda himself. And he wanted us to pass on these questions to other hardcore Star Wars fans to get their answers.
All right. Laurent, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
We're going to start off pretty easy here, okay? As Mac was saying, this isn't testing your trivia knowledge. This goes deeper. And the questions seem simple, but are they? All right. We're going to start off on the light side and ask you, Laurent, who or what, in the interest of inclusivity here, who or what is your favorite Star Wars character?
Well, I'm Team Solo, so I can't deny it. Even at 10 years old, my favorite was Han Solo.
Oh, perfect. And what is it about Han Solo? I think us Gen X guys like Han Solo a lot. We tend to say he's our favorite. Why is that?
I find it very surprising, but at school, Han Solo was everybody's favorite, and Luke wasn't really gathering much attention. So I don't know. I think it's the devil may care attitude that children love. The fact that he does, he does what he wants. He doesn't care.
That's just it.
Speaking of Han, there was something that I learned in this book that I didn't realize, or if I did know, I had forgotten, that George, or you sort of assert that George based the character of Han Solo on Francis Coppola.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, in one of the first versions of the script, there was a clear reference to Coppola, but I don't know if it remained in the next versions or in his mind. I don't know about that, but at some point it was clearly inspired by Coppola.
I love there's a little illustration that shows a bearded Han Solo looking kind of like Francis Coppola. It's very cool.
That is a good shot.
All right. Our next question, we're going to venture over to the dark side here and ask you, who or what is your least favorite Star Wars character? That character that you wish you'd never seen.
Yeah. Well,
this could be across films, original trilogy to the sequel trilogy, streaming shows, animation.
The first character that comes to mind, so it must be it. It's Vice Admiral Holdo.
Laurent, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Is it yours too?
She's up there. She is up there. And I love the actress, but man, do I not like that character at all.
I took my 80-year-old Southern Belle mother to see The Last Jedi. And I asked her about the film, and as she was breaking it all down, she got to Holdo. And she said, the woman with the purple hair, I did not like her. And that will always be just kind of burned into my soul every time I watch The Last Jedi. So I didn't like her either, quite honestly. I didn't like the acting performance. I didn't like the character, nor did I think it was necessary for her to be in the film at all. But
what in particular, Laurent, ruffled your feathers about Holdo?
Well, it's not about the actress who is a fine actress, but the character I think is unpleasant, and also she doesn't make sense. Her decision making is absolutely absurd. So that's the problem for me. If a character is acting in a stupid way, incoherent way, I cannot follow. It takes me out of the movie. So.
Well, you know that she's pretty much Rian Johnson's spiritual animal being represented on screen, making the wrong decisions. So I think now in retrospect, we can look back and say a lot of the decisions made in that film were wrong. At the time, I was on board with it. I was like, hey, let's get crazy, let's take this massive left turn. Then all of a sudden they announced that episode 9 was going to wrap it all up. And I said, wait, you just made this radical left turn with everything, and now you're going to try to wrap it all up? I wanted the 12 episodes. There are rumors that Simon Kinberg's trilogy will be episodes 10 through 12, but maybe just in the crawl. I don't see it ever being marketed as that, but we shall see. We shall see.
All right, Laurent, this is, I love when we get a chance to talk to a writer about these next couple of questions. So what moment in Star Wars, and like Jim said, could be across all movies, shows, animation, all that, but what moment in Star Wars always makes you smile?
It's hard to choose, obviously, when you're a fan, but the first thing that comes to mind is my favorite Star Wars moment, and it's honestly one of the greatest moments in movie history, period. It's when Han Solo comes to Luke's rescue during the Death Star attack. It's such an amazing moment because of how brilliantly it's set up. The genius of Lucas in directing and editing this sequence, with also the help of Marsha, of course, is that he completely makes you forget Han Solo at this moment in the movie. You're so caught up in the battle, so focused on getting those torpedoes into the exhaust port. The suspense is insane. You totally forget Han Solo. And then at the last possible second, he shows up. It's just magnificent. And the intensity of that moment is off the charts. Honestly, it hits even harder than the riders of the Rohan coming to the rescue in The Return of the King, because you absolutely don't see it coming, and that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that too. That's a great answer, and,
awesome.
And so impactful. Do you get transported back to being that kid in the 70s every time you see that moment? I think I do.
I try not to watch the movie too often to keep it fresh. Because otherwise it dulls it a little bit. So I try to keep it fresh by not watching the movies too often.
Okay.
But after a few years, I still get the chills when I watch it.
To each their own. Your fandom is like the sprinkler, My fandom's more like the fire hose. I'm watching this stuff all the time. and I find it doesn't diminish any sort of impact of any sequence.
There's a lot,
hey,
lot
to
more
each
of
their
it to
own,
watch now, which is kind of nice. You can sort of spread it around a bit. But okay, so what moment in Star Wars, Laurent, always makes you sad?
This interview.
That would be moments in the latest movies where it doesn't make sense. That's the big problem I have if there's no coherence in the story, in the characters, in the psychology of the characters. When I don't understand the reactions or the way they behave, that's really a problem for me. And really, there's quite a few moments like that in the latest movie. So Yes.
You know,
That
Laurent,
indeed.
that's interesting because you are the very first to answer that question in that way. What a lot of people will say is, "Oh, when Yoda dies, or when Darth Vader passes away at the end of Return of the Jedi." You are answering that question from the perspective of a fan watching, not from within the series of stories, but from without. And that's very, very interesting. So your version of what makes you sad is the direction that the story's turned. And I'm sure that that's certainly a reflection of you as an entertainment journalist, someone who's studied this stuff.
Yes, it didn't come to mind a moment that makes me cry. That is sad. Yeah, when I heard your question, I skipped that part. So,
Yeah, no,
that's fine.
It's fascinating. That, like we said, there are no wrong answers here, and so that tells me a lot. One final question here: if there was another Star Wars movie to be made, and we know that there are many that are on the in future plans, but this is different. This one is going to be executive produced by George Lucas. And he asks you, Laurent Hopman, to write it. What would you like to hear George say as he closes the script after reading it for the first time?
That's bold. Let's try that.
That's bold. And now hand me, and then he says, "Pass me the scissors," and starts snipping off his hair. Which is also featured in the graphic novel. We'd always heard those rumors that that's something that George had done. So have we ever been able to verify those rumors? Who brought that up in the first place? Do we even know where that story?
Yes, his assistant at the time, Bunny, mentioned that. So it's a pretty solid source, I think.
Absolutely.
You know, speaking of Bunny, something else that I learned in reading this, I didn't know that the pressure that George was under to write the films. I knew he had a lot of pressure, but that he would take it out like, I want this type of pencil, I want this type of legal pad. That specificity was surprising.
That's the type of details that tells a lot about her personality, and this is what I really love when I try to dig into the stories. This type of anecdotes, because you can, everybody can relate to this, and you really understand how much stress there is when you start focusing on such details. And get picky about the size of between the lines or the color of the lines on the pad. Well, this is very funny, and at the same time, it's a bit tragic because you can see the person stressed out and trying to grasp to something to hold on to what he's doing. So.
Yeah, well, even beyond that, though, you go into the psychology of it all and say there were so many things swirling around the early days of Star Wars that George couldn't control. So he became rather obsessive with the things he could control.
Exactly.
And then everything just sort of ballooned from there as far as the way he operates.
Exactly.
And Laurent, we know that this is not the end of the story. As Star Wars fans, we know that George goes on to have one of the most incredible careers in filmmaking. The drama doesn't end. We know that Empire Strikes Back, the making of that film, had lots of drama. You might know what I'm getting at here. Is there a possibility that, like the Star Wars saga itself, that this could be part of a saga and we might get your interpretation of the further adventures of George Lucas?
Well, exactly. Right from the beginning, the idea was for this graphic novel to be a trilogy. If the first volume can stand on its own, the concept was to follow George through the making of the original Star Wars trilogy, with his personal arc really coming to an end by the time you get to Return of the Jedi. It really is a rich, layered story that has so much to unpack. we wrapped up work on Volume 2 this summer, and it's hitting shelves in France this October. Renault will be kicking off the artwork for Volume 3 this fall. That one's going to cover not just the making of The Empire Strikes Back, but also a bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Volume 3 will deal with the filming of Raiders and, of course, the making of Return of the Jedi. It's a very exciting.
Great news.
So many things happen, and well, as you know, the story is really amazing.
Well, maybe we'll circle back around and talk to you about Empire, the Lucas Wars 2. Is that what we're going to call it? What's it going to be called?
Well, in France, it's called Lucas Wars Episode 2. So it's probably going to be the same in the US.
So when might we see because this is available now. This came out in September, or is it available now?
It's coming out. Yeah, it's coming out in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. So September 16th. Yeah, my wedding anniversary. It's coming out, which is great. We want all RFR listeners to jump on Amazon or wherever and get a copy of it. And then how long do you think we have to wait here in the States before we would see episode 2?
I think it's going to be at least 6 months to a year before episode 2 release in the US. I think, but I don't know. I don't know for sure.
Got it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
We'll be looking for it, and we'll keep in touch with the folks at 23rd Street Publishing who graciously sent us a copy of this book and helped arrange this interview. So thank you so much for spending your time with us, Laurent. This is like I said, this is right up our alley as people who really enjoy the behind-the-scenes making of stories when it comes to Star Wars. And it's such a fun retelling of all the events that led to that great film being created. So thanks a lot for all your hard work on this.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for this exciting and fun conversation.
Our
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Before we let you go, can you please just say, may the force be with you in français?
Que la force soit avec vous.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's awesome. Laurent, and you're awesome. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for hanging with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. There he goes. Laurent Hopman, author of Lucas Wars, this incredible graphic novel. And of course, we have to give lots of credit to his partner, Renaud Roche, who is the incredible illustrator. And Jim, there are moments when you're flipping through this that you feel like you're looking at a storyboard of a film.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with us being so familiar with all of these behind the scenes stories to begin with. It's such a gas to get this visual presentation of the story. It's so cool. And I like the idea of a live action theatrical retelling of the making of Star Wars, whether it be based on Lucas Wars or a bunch of different sources like Laurent used, because he used so many different sources. That's what I like about this the best, is that he exhausted all these different accounts of how everything went down, especially George Lucas's himself. But it's really worth your time.
He's going to expand the story and open it up to Raiders, and there's been less about Raiders, significantly less than Star Wars, obviously. So I'm curious to get Laurent's take on the relationship between George and Steven Spielberg as they're developing the story and going to shoot it. I mean, two Titan personalities, very different personalities, but still, that's going to be interesting to see it play out in graphic novel form.
Definitely.
Rebel Force Radio.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Manny Jacinto was one of several big Star Wars celebs that were over at the Fan Expo in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. And Jim, it's interesting. I mean, he certainly has a big fan following. Manny has been in other things, other properties other than Star Wars. But of course, when he goes to an event like Fan Expo, people are going to be talking about Star Wars, and that's going to be no surprise to Manny. He was, for a lot of people, one of the brighter spots of the Acolyte. He had a character that was, in a lot of ways, I think, kind of reminiscent of Kylo Ren, sort of that emo kind of dark sider. I think a lot of, particularly the female Star Wars fans, really took a shine to him, probably because of that skinny dipping scene where he was not just tempting May or Osha with the dark side, but tempting her in sort of a physical, kind of sexual way, which is something that we hadn't seen in Star Wars, really. That kind of temptation, that carnal temptation.
I don't know. He was a choice cut of Sith meat right there on screen, tempting Oshi and everyone else.
Yeah.
Whether you liked it or not. He's a great-looking guy and a really terrific actor, somebody who did stand out in The Acolyte.
Did.
So he did a panel, and the only conversation that went down during this panel was talk of Star Wars and The Acolyte. And RFR VIP, friend of the show, Suds, was there, and he captured us some audio highlights. So thank you very much, Suds. And here's Manny. Manny is talking a little bit about The Acolyte, and the question always gets asked, because you never know with these actors. Is this just a job, or is this something you'd really want to come back to if the potential for the return of Chimere is something that could come to fruition? So here's how Manny responded to that.
I would love nothing more to run it back. I grew up on the prequels as well, and as a kid, you watch that and you're just in awe of it. And then we grow up, and then now we have money. And we can actually, and we have more confidence as well. And we're able to voice our opinion. So I do hope that, it finds new life or it continues to find the love that people are, being out here has been so much love. And I just hope it continues, and we'll see. Yeah, you never say never, and listen, according to Justin Bieber, never say never.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't see this happening anytime soon, but I'm also an absolute believer in the never say never, especially in the world of entertainment. These things take on a whole new life. You have revivals of series. Look at Twin Peaks. That came back just a few years ago after how many years? Now that was it was a successful show, but it had like just a kind of more of a cult following. Didn't last, I think, more than a season or two when it initially aired, but it became something afterwards, and there were a lot of fans, and they clamored for more. So you just never know. Was it our cup of tea at the time? Not really. I think that there were a lot of holes in it, but you never know what perspective and time can do to something. So could we be talking about an Acolyte reunion of sorts in another decade? Possibly. I'm not going to say that it's impossible.
You can't rule anything out.
Right.
You can't rule anything out. But I do think there's a lot of value to the character, and I think a lot of people recognize that. So I'm not looking at necessarily an extension of the Acolyte story that will buoy this character to further adventures. It would be more like, imagine something in the future. Maybe it's like Chimere. He's like 100 years old, and he still is serving with Darth Plagueis as an apprentice. And he's trying to figure out ways to kill Plagueis. He just simply can't do it. And all of a sudden, this new potential apprentice shows up, Palpatine. Darth Sidious, the future Darth Sidious. And so you see he and Chimere have this, competitive interaction that eventually leads to a duel, and Palpatine ends up succeeding in killing Chimere. I mean, that would be an interesting thing. And then you could also tell the story of Chimere via flashbacks. So you can get that Sith meat moment on the screen with a younger Manny Jacinto.
Yeah.
So throughout the story, it's telling how he and Plagueis, you learn what happened to Osha and how he eventually beheaded her and hunted down her sister and killed her. And it's all just told via flashbacks leading up to the big moment, which is a showdown between Palpatine and Chimere. I'd like to see that story.
It makes me think about what a Palpatine series might look like. Not just...
You could definitely incorporate a character like Chimere.
Absolutely,
Absolutely,
you could. I mean, I still stand by. I know I get a lot of business from listeners about how I don't read many of the novels or hardly any of them, but I did read Plagueis and I loved it. I really loved it. It still holds up. It is relegated to the legend status now, but nevertheless, it told a great story. And with as much of the prequel fever that there is, the prequels are no longer the redheaded stepchild of the Star Wars universe. In fact, it's a very, very vocal base of fans that grew up with the prequels, and that Plagueis Palpatine feeding right into Episode 1, that's a story that has not been told officially, but there's a brilliant blueprint for it in the Plagueis novel. So, but the thing is too, with Chimere, is as much as there's some fan excitement about the character, he's never going to be anything more than just a footnote in Star Wars history. He's not a major player when it comes to the saga at large.
Well, I think a lot of people are just really impressed by the physicality of the performance that Manny provided and the connection to Darth Plagueis. Everyone wants that door unlocked and open. So I hope that in San Francisco at the Presidio that they're actually doing some development on those type of stories. Because I think if you're going to look backwards,
right,
in the Star Wars timeline, then let's really address the important stuff and stop dicking around with shows like The Acolyte that don't go anywhere, or The High Republic that takes you nowhere. Make it connect to the big story. All right. Manny also talked a little bit about Chimere falling to the dark side as he appeared at Fan Expo Chicago a couple weeks ago.
That's what I loved about this character. Leslie in her head, the whole theme of this storyline was, what is it like to really be seduced by the dark side? And in various aspects, one of the aspects was, how do you have a convincing argument to be able to come to the... Because from what we've seen before, no offense, I never really bought it per se. I see it and it's cool, but I was like, I don't think I would have crossed over sides just for that. But I think what we really wanted to do was have a strong argument in regards to, I just have a different way of life. If you don't accept that, then it's fine. Just seeing the outsider's point of view, and how, regardless of the people in power, there can be an abuse of power, regardless of if you're considered good or bad. So things like that. It was a fine line to play. It was a great character to kind of lean into with the guidance of Leslie, because again, it's just how do you convince some people who love the Jedi so much to come over to the dark side?
Well, I don't know. I think the promise of being able to live forever with Natalie Portman, I'd go to the dark side for that.
Right, dark side unlocked. No questions asked. But he says something in there that I really want to push back on, where he's just it's this is my lifestyle, and that's how I live it, and you live your lifestyle, and that's okay too. It's like, no. The Sith Lords are all about domination, death and destruction, rape and pillage, and all kind of nasty, terrible things. Manipulation.
They're evil.
Really messing with people's minds.
Evil
They're
is
just
not a
plain
lifestyle
evil.
choice. You can't make that.
And that's where the Acolyte fails,
Yeah.
ultimately. Is its complete lack of understanding of the Force, the light side, and the dark side, and how they all relate to each other. The Acolyte missed that by a mile. More talk from Manny about this is the thing that was really the most critically acclaimed element of the Acolyte were the saber duels and the viciousness of the physicality of Chimere. And Manny brought all that to the screen. So he talks about training for those moments, training for those saber duels in the Acolyte.
That was tough. If you see like the prequel footage, what they're using, it's very super light. It's like I don't know if it's like a wire or a piece of plastic, but ours, there's an actual LED light inside and the electronics were inside. So it was like another arm, basically, that I had to train for a good 5-6 months. And luckily I had that time because it wasn't easy. But yeah, luckily I had that time to really get that strength and that mobility, and I'm proud of what came out.
As you could tell, Manny took his job very seriously. And as you can also tell by the enthusiasm of the crowd, that there are a lot of big Chimere fans out there, big Manny Jacinto fans out there. And so I predict that he will have a future in Star Wars. I predict we will see Chimere again. I don't predict we'll see an extension necessarily of the Acolyte story. Anything that he appears in, though, will probably have references and maybe tie up some loose ends of that story, because everyone wants that. Nobody wants this, half-told story in the Star Wars mythology.
Well, it's a huge hole. We don't like, as fans, we don't like that. We want every hole filled in.
Yes.
And all Acolyte did was just create another hole to fill instead of filling in gaps, filling in holes. And that to me was the most irresponsible thing, because I think they came in with a lot of hubris, like, hey, we've got something really great here, and we know this is going to go on for seasons and years. And I think there was just a real lack of humility in the whole approach to that show. I'll say that.
Yeah, but there was not a lack of funds. It seemed like they had just a bottomless pit of money, and that really opened up Disney's eyes. They're like, okay, enough of this. We have to invest in quality storytelling, and we have to invest in telling the stories the fans want. So I think there is a real effort being made to try to put their fingers on the pulse and figure out what Star Wars fans really want, and stop all of this experimentation, and stop treating the fan base like we're a bunch of lab rats, I mean, let's get down and dirty and get back to basics.
Yeah.
Essentially. And I think the Superman movie from James Gunn is an indication that Hollywood is getting back to basics. And I like to see that.
Agreed. All right. So Manny wasn't the only one that was out talking in front of microphones. We had Mark Hamill, he's over in the UK, I believe, right? And he's, what is he promoting? The Life of Chuck. That's right. And so he's doing the tour over in the UK for this film. And a topic came up about the change that George made early on, where he changed Luke Skywalker's name from Starkiller to Skywalker. Now,
right.
There was a whole evolution of the character. At one point, the Starkiller was a female, and then later became a male character. It was Luke Starkiller, and then at some point it became Skywalker. So
it was Deke Starkiller,
Deke.
actually.
So it was never
before
Luke
he became
Starkiller.
Luke. Yeah.
Okay, so it was Deke Starkiller. And this gets confused, Jim, a lot because there is a Star Killer character, the Sam Witwer character from The Force Unleashed. Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking that was named in homage to the history of the Deke Star Killer character in the early stages of development.
And I believe it was actually George Lucas himself who determined that the character from The Force Unleashed, Galen Merrick, was going to be known as the Star Killer. I think it was George who actually made that call. But Star Killer was originally supposed to be Luke's last name, Luke Star Killer. And all the way through the fourth draft, he was Luke Star Killer. And the fourth draft is what they started shooting the film with. And that went on for several months at that time. And then George came up with the revised fourth draft, which not only changed the name of Luke from Star Killer to Skywalker, but it also brought us the death of Ben Kenobi at the hands of Darth Vader. So, yeah, it was a pretty massive revised fourth draft, but they were already shooting by the time that fourth draft came to light. So just to kind of fill people in on the Luke name change, I pulled an excerpt from The Secret History of Star Wars as narrated by the great Josh Robert Thompson. You'll hear his awesome George Lucas voice in this clip, but it sort of gives you the information you need to have to understand why George made that change after shooting had already begun.
A month into shooting, Lucas then made the decision to change Star Killer to Skywalker. When Charles Manson was in the news, Lucas explained in Mythmaker, people who knew about the name Star Killer started asking, "Are you making a movie about mass murderers or something?" I said, "Okay, I won't use that name."
Simple as that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that was an enormous story that unfolded all over the world. All eyes were on that and the Manson murders. And so, yeah, there is a different connotation to Star Killer. We think of it as Star Wars fans of the stars as opposed to celebrity, that kind of killer. But that was top of mind for people back there in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the Hollywood star specifically, that was Sharon Tate, who was a very famous, a real up-and-comer at that time in the late 60s when the Manson family paid a visit to her home and ended up killing her viciously. And so the headlines were like, Star Killer on the loose. Things like that. And so, I mean, Star Wars happened, 8 years after the Manson murders. George was, he was shooting it in 1976, so that would have been 7 years later. So you never know if this is a situation of George, revising his own history, or if that's, it just seems like such an out there thing to say that, it sounds so crazy, it has to be true.
It does, and maybe, I don't know, but there were so many documentaries and films about those, so maybe that was happening.
The Helter Skelter, of course.
At the time, which would have maybe brought it back into the fore for people. So that's another possibility.
All right, so now that we all have that background, let's hear from Mark Hamill on ITV, British Television's ITV this morning, where he discusses that name change to Skywalker and how it kind of blindsided him a little bit.
Harrison, to me, was a leading man, so I just assumed he was the leading character and I was his annoying sidekick. Then I get the movie and they sent me the script and I said, I don't remember who I played, but Harrison must be Luke, who was named Luke Starkiller at that time. And then I started reading it and I went, oh my gosh, it's through my point of view, which is really unusual. And the only reason I mentioned Luke Starkiller is it stuck for so long that we shot the scene, I'm Luke Starkiller, I'm here to rescue you. And they came back the next week and I said, why are we doing that scene again? They said, oh, they've changed your name. I said, to what? And they said, to Skywalker. And now you've gotten so used to the other. And plus, let's face it, Luke can use a little machoing up with his name.
Yeah.
And I said, it sounded like Luke Fly Swatter. I hated it. I just hated it because for 4 months, that's all it was.
So, all right. So Mark was he liked the old name better because it was a little more. Had a little more machismo to it. He was a star killer.
Yes.
But Jim, were you surprised to hear Mark talk about the fact that they had shot a scene or shot that famous scene of I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you, with the old Star Killer name, and they had to do a reshoot on that? I'd never heard that, and I've never seen that outtake.
Well, that's the only time his name is said in the film.
That's
his
right.
full name. He's known only as Luke throughout the entire film. That's the only time he reveals his surname, Luke Skywalker. You'd think that it was said many, many times throughout that original film. But there was only one time where he identified himself as something other than Luke. Just Luke.
Yeah.
No, now he's Luke Skywalker.
Luke!
Oh, okay. Okay, so so they had to reshoot that scene.
Yeah.
Originally it was like, I'm Luke Starkiller. I'm here to rescue you. You're who? Luke Starkiller. And then they gave him the pages, the script pages, and he's like, what? We shot this like weeks ago. I have to do this again? So, name change. A what? Name change.
I saw Helter
Manson
Skelter over the
murders,
weekend. And,
Helter Skelter. Squeaky From, Star Killer. Manson's.
But have you ever seen the clip? Has that ever surfaced? I don't think I've ever seen it.
No. No. You know how much gold is in those Lucasfilm vaults?
I know someone who knows how much gold is, and we're going to see him next week
Steve.
because Steve had the opportunity, the challenge, the curse, however you look at it, of watching hours upon hours of behind the scenes, deleted scenes, all that as he was helping to work on the Blu-ray set, I believe it was.
Yeah, Steve felt like it was a little it was the episode 1 specifically was the stuff that he had the access to and had to go through and find all the good stuff. And they had thousands of hours of episode 1 stuff, including shots of Kenny Baker using the latrine and being too small to use it, so we had to have people hold him over the trench so he could drop some droid deuces. But Steve went through all that stuff, and he said it was kind of like, time consuming and mundane and a little boring. I don't know, man. I would have loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I know. I
really would have loved every minute of it. But that's what you say, hour 1.
That's right.
Hour 2, hour 3. But by the time you get to hour 250, the luster has worn off.
I don't know. There was a scene where he said Star Killer, and I thought, who wants to see that? We don't need that on the Blu-ray.
Oh, but they have so much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They have so much stuff. So, but that's Mark Hamill, turning back the clock and looking at that specific moment of shooting. And God bless Mark. He keeps pulling stories out of his butt about the making of Star Wars. The more you talk about it, the more those old memories kind of resurface.
Oh, yeah.
And that appears to be the case with Mark. And he's always ready with a good story and a good Harrison Ford impersonation and anything. So great that he embraced Star Wars. It was Carrie Fisher that really encouraged him to embrace the whole experience and to own it.
Yeah.
And Mark was hands off with Star Wars. He's trying to keep it all at arm's length because he felt like that it had defined him and made it hard for him to find work. And he just was trying to really separate himself from Luke Skywalker. And it was Carrie Fisher who said, "Hey, fool, you know how much money you're leaving on the table?" And then she showed him a check she got from some convention where she signed autographs for 3 hours, and he saw that.
Right.
Eyes jumped out of his head, and all of a sudden he's embracing Star Wars again. But I think he really gets there's a real cathartic element to this too, where it was something that he was kind of running from for many, many years. And then he just did a 180 and turned around and started to embrace it. And I think that's really benefited him in ways that are more than just monetary.
Yeah.
It's like he finds peace with all of that. So I could appreciate
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that people can go to a convention and see Mark and hear the story straight from him. It's awesome.
Rancho Obi-Wan is home to the world's largest Star Wars memorabilia collection, as recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. Become a member of Rancho Obi-Wan right now to get exclusive access to tours of Rancho Obi-Wan, invites to special events, and more. Plus, you can also make a difference and help Rancho Obi-Wan grow with a simple donation of $1 or higher. Visit ranchoobi-wan.org now to get the latest news, become a member, or make a donation. ranchoobi-wan.org.
All right, we've got another story coming up, and you don't want to miss this one because it is just, well, it's
outrageous. It's unthinkable.
That's right. This is one, we can't leave this out. So, Jim, take us through this one. This was a tip from RFR listener Kenny E. Farmer over in the RFR Facebook group, and it deals with a Yoda statue in Tennessee that caused quite a controversy.
Yeah, in Jonesboro, Tennessee, there was a store owner who set a Yoda statue out in front of his shop, and apparently it had it elicited some complaints where people felt that it was odd that it was out there, but they didn't start complaining until like a long period of time had passed where the statue was out in front of the shop. And so people had kind of grown attached to it, not just the store owners and the customers, but just passersby and residents. There was something that they felt was quirky and fun and awesome about that Yoda statue. And so some people did complain, though, and that sparked all of this debate in the town hall and everything. So let's go to WKRN Nashville and hear their report about this controversial Yoda statue.
A Star Wars saga that has been the talk of the town in Jonesboro for more than a week has now taken a major turn. So we're all talking about this guy here, a 2-foot-tall statue of Jedi Master Yoda sitting outside a lollipop shop there in Jonesboro. Well, this Yoda statue garnered a lot of attention after the owner said that he was told he cannot have it outside on the sidewalk and he has to bring it inside his store. Guess what? That led to a petition demanding the statue remain where it is outside. But an update this morning at last night's Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, the town's beloved Yoda statue was granted what is called an outdoor permit and even a citizenship.
He's an honorary citizen of Jonesboro. We adopted that tonight. But more seriously, we approved an outdoor use permit where he can stay in front of the lollipop shop. We think it's a good place for Yoda, and really he has become a part of the town. People really like him a lot.
All is well in the universe now. By the way, the force was very strong for the Yoda statue. The board voted unanimously to approve that permit. Thank goodness. When we first saw that last week on the newscast, we were laughing so hard.
We were dying laughing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yoda is hilarious, but that's the kind of community activism I love to see.
Look at that. People getting out there making some change for Yoda.
Unity.
We would like some unity.
Yes.
Well, you know, they were laughing about it, but I tell you what, that's great. Star Wars is an excellent unifier of people, and I do love to see the civic wheels turn in the right direction for once.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so this thing, so the lollipop shop, so this Yoda statue showed up in May 2023 as part of a May the 4th promotion, and it had been there ever since. And it was just recently, within the last year, that, Jim, do you know how many complaints there were? Would you like to take a guess?
I do. Yeah, you can count it on 2 fingers. 1, 2. That's it.
There were 2 complaints about this, and the people that complained wouldn't even go on record. So,
yeah, you know what was up with that, though, right?
What was up?
Trekkies.
Oh, you're going to lay this at the feet of the Trekkers? Yeah, you know, it very well may be. They might have been considered themselves marginalized. But yeah, 2 people objected, and then the statue ordered it was ordered to be moved indoors. And that's when it all broke loose, and they had the because this apparently the owner of the lollipop shop said that this was all approved by the zoning commission back in 2023. So he claims that this was all on the up and up, but nonetheless, it did go through the whole process. And it's kind of good that it did, because I think it did a lot for the community. It was something, I guess, kind of funny, lighthearted, interesting, but the people were serious. They wanted to make sure that this Yoda statue stayed outside of the lollipop shop where they had grown to love him. And now this thing is a statue. By the way, it's a prequel era Yoda statue, I noticed. In case you're needing to visualize this as you're listening to us on the podcast. So, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. We heard from the mayor of Jonesboro himself in that clip where he said, we've made Yoda an honorary citizen of Jonesboro.
Yeah.
Because we won his tax dollars, baby.
We heard he got a couple of points on those movies from George Lucas, and we can imagine what he's going to do for the economy of Jonesboro. But Jim,
he's a Hollywood star.
There were Save Yoda signs throughout the town and in people's yards. I mean, yeah, there'd been a lot of fun. But
yeah. Obviously, beside watching the paint dry in Jonesboro, there's not much else to do. So.
Oh, man.
You watch the paint dry, you complain about the Yoda in front of the lollipop shop. That's a month's worth of work right there in Jonesboro, Tennessee. But I want to visit Jonesboro and interview the Yoda statue itself here on RFR, an exclusive interview. So we shall see. Pack your bags, Swank. We're going to Jonesboro.
Jonesboro.
Baby Yoda, I love you.
Rebel Force Radio.
Hey, before we sign off here, we've been talking about the ILM Light and Magic Season 2 documentary that's featured on Disney Plus, and encouraging everybody to watch it, because it really is fantastic, especially as this season starts to tackle the prequel era. So the first season was really focused on the original trilogy, which has been covered extensively over the years. But seeing the prequels, now you've got those documentaries, Jim, on the DVDs and the Blu-rays, but we haven't had the luxury of perspective and context like we get now, where the prequels are now a couple of decades old. And so here we are able to look back on the prequels with nostalgia. That's what struck me about season 2 of ILM Light and Magic, is that we finally are now seeing the prequels in documentary form through the prism of nostalgia and looking back.
And with the affordability of the cushion of time, I think we get some more honest reactions from some of these creatives about things like the backlash to Jar Jar Binks. There's no denying it by anyone. And it gets spoken about extensively in Light and Magic Season 2. And I think it's kind of refreshing about the way that they're very honest about it all. And so we have a clip here where we hear some of the main creatives talking about some of the Jar Jar Binks backlash that occurred right after the film was released, and what their experience was like as they learned about it, and it started to affect them, emotionally and mentally. And so in this clip from ILM Light and Magic Season 2, we're going to be hearing about the Jar Jar backlash from Ahmet Best, George Lucas, Rick McCallum, and I believe Rob Johnson is also in this. Rob Coleman. Rob Coleman. Not Rob Johnson. Who's that? Rob Coleman is in here, and you'll hear about these guys, how they sort of learned that maybe the reaction to Jar Jar was less than favorable from audiences and critics.
At a press junket, I was asked this very ridiculously obscure question about Jar Jar's sexuality. I was taken aback because Jar Jar is a 7-foot amphibian. So I didn't quite know how to answer that question. But that's when I kind of realized that people were seeing something that we weren't prepared for. After that, it was just like this flood of backlash.
What is that accent based on? I mean, it sounds vaguely French.
No accent. No Jamaican, no patois, no Creole, no French, no German, no nothing.
So Rob Coleman and Ahmed Best were pretty much devastated by the response. What did you tell them?
I told him, you're in the movie business. 80% of the people in the movie business get trashed. Personally. In very, very destructive ways.
That's when I heard that we were trying to exploit this poor amphibian creature with Rastafarian hair. We were racist. Jar Jar's a racist character. It really was just draining, to constantly have to defend the work. Even if you talk about the character, you're talking about me. But it wasn't just me as Jar Jar. We were Jar Jar. ILM was Jar Jar. George was Jar Jar. I'm the face of it, but it was all of us. We all hurt because of it. And I felt as if I let everybody down. I felt it was my fault.
Wow. Yeah, it gets very, very real. And when we lived it, Jim, we were there for all of it. I was in college, and I remember feeling shocked that they were reading racist overtones and things. I wasn't shocked that the character didn't land in terms of some of the comedy, because it didn't really land for me as a...
Wait, excuse me? What? Excuse me?
Yeah. As a 22-year-old, it was, it wasn't my favorite character, but I didn't read into it what others were reading into it. I remember being so hyped up about the technological achievement that the character represented. I remember being caught up in that. Yep. So that's where my mind was. My mind was that going into it was that this was going to be the Chewbacca of this trilogy. That was my assumption. I think it's because I saw early photos, production photos of Jar Jar alongside Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon on the little ship, the little water vessel. What is it?
It's a bongo.
The bongo. Okay. And just thinking, okay, so you got the human characters and you've got the alien, a big, tall alien creature. So I went into it expecting him to be like Chewbacca 2.0, not to be this childlike type character. But for these guys that had to push the boundaries of everything they understood about their craft, from Ahmed as the actor to Rob Coleman as the character designer, animator, for them to be smacked right in the face with these accusations, it's an incredibly heavy moment in the documentary, and you really feel it. And Ahmed goes even further later on, talking about what he was led to damn near take his life because of the reaction. And he was saying in that last quote, he felt responsible for it. I think George had the best perspective, but George also had the luxury of being a billionaire, of kind of having ridden through other storms in his professional career. And a lot of these guys were young. This was their first foray into something this high profile, and it was legit traumatic for them.
Terrible. I mean, just media was especially vicious. Now it's social media that's vicious. But back in those days, it was just the media.
Yeah.
Man, if they turned their knives on you, you were dead duck. And Jar Jar Binks was that duck. And it's really sort of rough to hear these guys even talk about it. Ahmed has told a story before about when he was on a bridge in New York and he was considering jumping at some point. It was so overwhelming to him, the beatdown he took and the damage that may have attached itself to his career in general. And so he talks a little bit about it in the podcast called The Redemption of Jar Jar Binks, as well as the ILM Light and Magic series. And I believe we've discussed that before.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't want to suck the effectiveness out of his story by playing simple sound bites here on the show. So I'm going to recommend, if you want to hear that whole story, you check out ILM Light and Magic Season 2, because it's just a very powerful moment in the documentary. And it just shows you that, hey, the people you see on screen, they're all human beings with feelings and emotions just like you. And sure, you might say, oh, well, they make all this money doing this, and so they should be able to, accept the criticism and everything. But you know what? You're removing the entire human element out of it when you have that sort of mindset. So I just, I'm not preaching to anybody or telling anybody how to act, but those are just some of the things that run through my mind on occasion when I'm thinking about this talent that unfortunately gets thrown to the wolves from time to time, while George Lucas sits completely insulated and and just like, and for George is like made out of Teflon. Things just bounce off of him. Yeah. He doesn't care. You're going to hear in this next clip about how the creatives like Rick McCallum and John Knoll and Rob Coleman and former ILM president Jim Morris dealt with the fallout of Jar Jar Binks and the harsh criticisms of the Phantom Menace. And you're going to hear Rob Coleman in this next clip kind of explain to you where George Lucas's head was when all of these bad reviews were coming in.
There were a lot of things that critics poked at with episode 1, choices George made or didn't make, and certainly Jar Jar was on that list.
Because Star Wars isn't just a movie. It taps into the collective zeitgeist of just millions and millions of people who found it to be the greatest cinematic experience they'd ever had as they were growing up. I understand the dislike from older fans.
The people that were fans of the originals forget that they were kids when they saw them, are kind of evaluating them with adult sensibilities and not really understanding, what the intent was. You love what you grew up with.
And George had said, I guarantee that later in life, 10, 20 years down the road, kids who are 10 now are going to come up to you and tell you that Jar Jar is their favorite character. And he's right. It's happened.
It has happened. It absolutely has happened. And, but I can't imagine watching episode 1, even back in 1999. And the first question I would have for Ahmed Best is, tell me about the character's sexuality.
I know.
Is Jar Jar gay? Like, I just can't imagine that even entering my mind.
Yeah, right. Especially, when you think about the George Lucas created Star Wars films, the idea of sexuality is so far out there. I mean, remember that famous quote from Kirsch when he was shooting Empire Strikes Back and how he really tried to be sensitive and delicate with the scene where Han kisses Leia.
Right.
Because the idea of that sort of physical romance happening in the Star Wars universe was completely a foreign concept up to that point. And Kirsch famously said that a kiss in Star Wars is the equivalent of intercourse in any other film. And he's right on with something. I remember being a kid anticipating going to see Empire Strikes Back, and I was like 12 years old. I still kind of like the girls are icky, but maybe not. They're not as icky as I used to think they were. But still, who needs sappy romance in my Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna when that romantic moment happens, I'm gonna use that as my bathroom break. Little did I know, it was because it was so prominently featured on the novelization cover and on the posters.
Oh, yeah.
The famous "Gone with the Wind" pose with
Right.
Han and Leia.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh man, Star Wars is gonna become like all my children.
It's a romance novel. It's a soap opera.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But of course, it was all very essential to the story and the characters and everything else. We now know.
Yeah.
But the kiss in Star Wars, Swank, is the equivalent of intercourse in any other film.
Yeah, and there's a lot made about our society today and the way we look at things, and I guess this just goes to show you that it's not necessarily a new phenomenon. This lens that we have, that we look at this stuff, it was all the way back in 1999. People reading into things, reading into characters. But at any rate, it is so worth your time. Please go watch it. It's awesome, and maybe we'll have other clips from it as well. There's a whole lot of water talk and animating of water. I remember I should sort of fast forward through that. I swear to God, there's a whole episode about animating water in the perfect storm.
Oh, they get so deep.
And then they talk about passing up on Avatar, which is really interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. Good
yeah.
stuff. So that's ILM Light and Magic Season 2. Watch both seasons on Disney Plus. Highly recommended if you're into the behind-the-scenes machinations of creating special effects in Star Wars. But I got to say, I know we're starting to get short on time now, but I really want to do pop culture because our first clip shows that there's two sides of every coin. For every Star Wars fan or moviegoer in the early 90s or late 90s who hated The Phantom Menace, there were plenty of kids who loved that film, and we're going to hear from a very famous musician about his thoughts of The Phantom Menace coming up next in Star Wars and pop culture.
Rebel Force Radio.
You've already made that Star Wars reference.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars parody!
All right. Well, no parodies this week, but we definitely have some Star Wars in pop culture. And as Jim mentioned, this is an example of just how powerful the love of the Star Wars prequels and the prequel era is for an entire generation.
That's right. So we have Ed Sheeran, the great Ed Sheeran, who recently appeared on the Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey podcast. I guess she's one of the, she's married to one of the Kelseys, not the one who's going to marry Taylor Swift. Definitely not that Kelsey.
Not Travis, but the other Kelsey.
Not Travis, but the other, the beer drinking.
Yeah.
I think, the other Kelsey brother, the beer drinking one who is since retired. I think he played with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Whatever. If they're not Chicago Bears or going to marry Taylor Swift, then they don't really come up on my radar. So I'm sorry. That's how
you have no memory for the other Kelsey. Well, they're both Clevelanders.
I know, yeah.
I shouldn't remember his name because it's Jason Kelsey. So,
Jason Kelsey, of course, I knew
Kelsey.
that. The fun beer drinking Kelsey.
Yeah.
But the other one is
the one that Mac would want to hang out with.
Marrying. Yeah, absolutely. I hang out with both the Kelseys. But I think the one that's going to marry Taylor's a little too high maintenance for my liking. The other one is a beer drinking, fun loving guy who will slap around people who try to take his picture when he doesn't want it taken. That's my kind of football player. So, my kind of retired football player, I should say. So, Ed Sheeran appeared on Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, and they talked about various topics, including, of course, his fandom of Star Wars. So let's tune into another podcast, Not Gonna Lie, is her name Kyle Kelsey or Kylie Kelsey? Who cares? I only care about hearing from Ed Sheeran. Let's go.
Hey, I'm Ed Sheeran, and not gonna lie, I think Star Wars The Phantom Menace is my favorite film out of the Star Wars films. And I know that's unpopular, but I was 8 when it came out, and I really liked it. It gives me a lot of nostalgia.
So not the original. I
like the originals. They're great. They bang. You put them on, you're like, this is a classic. I'm actually really excited to play them to my kids and for them to be like, Darth Vader is who? And me be like, yeah. Phantom Menace, as an 8-year-old, going to watch that in the cinema and seeing Darth Maul do his double lightsaber. And I liked Jar Jar Binks. I know people rag on Jar Jar Binks. I'm saying, as an 8-year-old, when you're going to the cinema for like one of the first times in your life.
You remember feeling that?
Yeah, that slaps.
It does. And it still does. In fact, it slaps, I think, better than it did in 1999, at least for me. But if you're an 8-year-old, there's no denying that that was the intended audience. In fact, we know for a solid fact that George Lucas gave some advice to Ron Howard when Ron got the job of directing Solo. There wasn't a whole lot of involvement from George Lucas, but one of the things that he said to Ron Howard was, just remember, you're making it for 12-year-old boys.
The other thing you said was, that slaps. Just like Ed Sheeran.
Oh, but the point being that the perspective is, you know your audience. Jar Jar resonated and worked with the intended audience. That it worked for the 22-year-old, soon-to-be college graduate me. No, but it wasn't intended to play to me. So, but you know what? I look back on it now and I love Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, Jar Jar appealed to me because I was just days away from becoming a dad. And all I could think of is, Jar Jar's childish and immature and juvenile. My kid's going to love this character.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah. That really did color my perspective and made me so open to all of the weirdness that Jar Jar Binks brought to the Phantom Menace and everything else that was weird about the Phantom Menace. I fully embraced.
But man, nobody takes chances anymore like George Lucas did. You watch those movies, the world building, the creature designs, all of the creative choices that went into it.
Wow.
And like nobody has the balls to do anything remotely like that now in this cookie cutter world. Even the people that are making Star Wars now don't have the balls to make it like George Lucas did.
Well, they just don't know how to make it evolve. They're sort of stuck in a rut. George was always facing forward and helping Star Wars evolve through things like creativity, through things like out-of-the-box thinking. And
pushing the technology.
Absolutely. He was going somewhere with all of this stuff. Everyone else now is just kind of satisfied, spinning around in donuts in the middle of the intersection, while George is the one riding off into the sunset. But as I said to you on the 20th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, when we were at Star Wars Celebration Chicago in 2019, we were in that panel. And at one point I looked at you and I said, dude, they just don't make movies like this no more.
Absolutely true. Amen. And by the way, Star Wars in pop culture is not something that just came about in the 90s or the 2000s. Star Wars in pop culture goes further back than that. And we've got a great example of this. This shocked the heck out of me. Season 6 of the classic sitcom Cheers.
Yeah, we got a heads up from Andy Lindemann, who's a longtime listener of RFR, a.k.a. Chewbubba. And Chewbubba is checking in with us as he's been binging the Cheers episodes on DVDs with his family. They check out the DVDs from their library, which is a great way to watch movies on the cheap and things like that.
Absolutely.
Always support your public libraries. Gosh, there's one here right in my neighborhood, and it's in walking distance, and I feel so lucky to have it. But Season 6 of Cheers, Episode 15, A Tale of Two Cuties. There were some hilarious Star Wars references that Woody Harrelson made throughout the episode.
Ironic.
So, yeah, right. A guy who had a future in Star Wars. I wonder if Rhea Perlman is also going to be featured in any of these clips. Of course, she had a future in Star Wars in The Bad Batch as Sid. Remember Sid?
I remember Sid. Adventures of the Week with Sid.
Yeah, right. Like the most repetitive character in the history of Star Wars was Sid. But so we have a double dose of Cheers alumni appearing in Star Wars. There's a third. There is another. Of course, Cliff Clavin.
Oh,
John Ratzenberger was in the Hoth base as Major Derlin. So we have three. It's just a matter of time before Ted Danson ends up in a Star Wars film or a streaming series. But so let's go back to that episode from season 6, episode 15, and here's some of these Star Wars references.
Hey, anyone see the conclusion of the White House murders last night?
No, don't say anything. I've got it on tape.
Did you believe it was the vice president?
Please.
How about where the first lady popped out of a pool of her own blood and strangled the Russian ambassador?
No.
Yeah, that was my reaction exactly.
Well, thank you, one and all, for ruining yet another plot for me. I'll be off now. But before I go, something I'd like to share with you. In Citizen Kane, Rosebud is the name of his sled. In Murder on the Orient Express, everyone did it. And Luke Skywalker's father is Darth Vader.
Yeah, why doesn't the guy tell us something we don't know, huh?
Darth Vader is Luke's father?
I just can't get over the fact that...
Woody always slow on the uptake of information there. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
But going back to the early 80s for this one and Cheers. And it was just, grasping at those great twists throughout Hollywood history. When those reveals get made on the screen that really push you in the back of your seat. The Citizen Kane, for example. And, you can't talk about the history of the big twists and turns in Hollywood without mentioning the "I am your father" moment.
Yeah, that made a lot of sense of all of those reveals.
But they couldn't let it go.
No,
you think they were talking about Citizen Kane later in the show?
Same episode we're talking about.
Same episode. They bring Star Wars up once again. Woody Harrelson, of course, being the center of the conversation.
Darth Vader cannot be Luke Skywalker's father. They don't have the same last name.
That's right, Woody. I'd better call out the Imperial Guard.
Stop it, Mr. Peterson. You're scaring me.
Norm doing the Darth Vader breathing effect with his empty beer mug, scaring poor young Woody. I mean, everyone's done that, right? We've all grabbed that mug and... See, I'm doing it now.
Yeah. I prefer to go into the fan. I remember the fan.
The Tommy Boy.
Yeah, before Tommy Boy did it, we did it. All of us kids back in the 80s did that one. That was not just Tommy Boy.
Chewie, get us out of here!
He just made it cool, but we were all doing it,
La Luke, I am your father.
All right, that's going to wrap up another Rebel Force Radio. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Also, big thanks to Laurent Hopman, the writer of Lucas Wars. Check it out. It comes out September 16th. Pre-order it now. You're not going to be disappointed. Get that on your Star Wars shelf. As we mentioned earlier in the program, if you need more Rebel Force Radio in your life, check out RFR over on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Weekly full show video, exclusive podcasts, and a great community of Star Wars fans, the best community of Star Wars fans. And you're going to be hearing from many of those when we release our Live from Rancho Obi-Wan podcast. Look forward to that next week. We're also over on YouTube and the social channels for RFR on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and the website for all things and everything, Rebel Force Radio. Of course, rebelforceradio.com. So help us out here. Help us spread the news, spread the word about Rebel Force Radio. So talk to the Star Wars fans in your life that maybe have never listened to a podcast, let alone a Star Wars podcast. Let them know about RFR. We'd love to have new listeners, and the show continues. Almost 2 decades worth to grow by leaps and bounds. So help us out. Spread the word. Subscribe if your podcatcher of choice allows you to do so. Leave us a review. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
And that's it for us. We'll see you next week, live from Rancho Obi-Wan. You don't want to miss that. So, until then, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Que la Force soit avec vous.